This is Space Cat's Peace Turtles, the unofficial podcast for Fantasy Flight's Twilight Imperium. Episode 88, Promissory Notes, Part 2. Music by Ben Prunty, featuring Matt Martins and Hunter Donaldson.
But we could start our movie podcast with Movie Talk.
Movie Talk?
Where we talk about Toy Story 4 and how excited
neither of us have seen.
Haven't seen it yet, but how about this? I'm about to draw a line in the sand right now, the beginning of this episode, and say that Toy Story 2 is the best one.
Yeah, who was somebody recently saying it's the worst one? Who was I around? Were
Dude,
you in that conversation?
I keep meeting people that keep saying Toy Story 2 is bad, and that's wild. It is a Godfather Part 1, Godfather Part 2 situation, where
it is far superior.
Obviously, Godfather Part 1 is great, and we all love Marlon Brando. It's great.
Sure, whatever.
Part 2 is really pushes everything further, and is a lot more satisfying film.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the more mature movie. It's less it's a cool gangster movie. It's more deeper invested in the characters.
What
and
you're
in the
saying is Jesse and Al Pacino are basically the same.
I'm saying that the Prospector is
there's gold in them hills.
One of the best movie villains ever.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes 2, 3, 1, probably. Maybe 2, 1, 3. I don't know. 1 and 3 are the same to me.
Well, the Toy Story 1 is just complicated to talk about because I think it's the least interesting one to go back to, but it was also it's changed the most important movies forever. So it's, this is
quite a tangent, but I have one last thing to add to the tangent, which is, have you ever seen the video of the person who took Toy Story 3 and in showing it to their wife on DVD? Oh, we're going to wait till we get it on DVD. They took and they edited out everything after all of the toys start falling into the lava. He had it fade to black and cut to credits.
Oh my God.
And so his wife watched it and thought it was the darkest of dark endings that a movie could possibly have directed towards children. And it's maybe the greatest prank that has ever been pulled by anyone ever.
So messed up. That is so messed up.
Hi, welcome to Space Cat's Peace Turtles, a movie podcast. Sometimes we talk about baking.
Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed Movie Talk. That was the the new pre-show for our show, Space Cats, Peace Turtles. Matt, are you excited about the live show that we've got coming up?
I'm
at
freaking
GenCon?
Out about the live show. We had a good little meeting today where we covered some stuff. We're getting it planned. This is the only episode of Space Cats Peace Turtles that's going to be planned 2 months in advance.
Yes.
Unless you want to consider strategy guides that way, but I don't.
Sure. I'll say this. I think the Space Cats Peace Turtles live show is either the beginning of what will be a kind of tradition going forward, or a one-off where we got to make a lot of in-jokes. So it will be very in-jokey for people that have been listening to the show. I feel like it's going to be a treat, a kind of exploration of everything we've been doing with Space Cats Peace. Everything that makes Space Cats Peace Turtles distinctly Space Cats Peace Turtles. Yeah. I think we're going to be playing the Twilight Imperium RPG, but the way I like to think about it is it's going to be set in the Space Cats Peace Turtles universe.
Right.
Not the Twilight Imperium universe.
They are slightly different.
They are slightly
different barony. There's different barony. That's the key.
Yes. So be excited for that. That's going to be really fun.
Well, Hunter, what are we doing today, though? What's going on?
Today we got to keep talking about promissory notes because the Galactic Council ordered us, and we do their bidding.
And we only talked about 4 last week, so it's time to quit mucking about. We've got 17 to cover today.
Oh, joy. Well, this will be Easy peasy, and there definitely won't be. Actually, I'll go ahead and say this. I don't want there to be a part 3. Let's do it. Let's get
go.
part 2 done. So let's talk about the faction promissory notes.
First up, this is gonna be the easiest. This is gonna set the standard for how quickly we talk about faction promissory notes. Because first up is Arborek Stymie. As an action, place this card face up in your play area. While this card is in your play area, the Arborek player cannot produce units in or adjacent to non-home systems that contain one or more of your units. If you activate a system that contains one or more of Arborek units, return this card to the Arborek player. That's the last time you'll ever need to read that text.
Yeah.
Don't use it. This is number one. We were trying to assign like market values to cards last time, and this is where it gets even more important because it's not like with generic promissory notes, the market value is the equivalent promissory note. Usually, that's kind of what it ends up being, or something equivalent to that. With these, there's no equivalent. There's nothing like Stymie. So what is Stymie worth? Well, Stymie is worth diddly squat because you should never get rid of it.
Yeah, I think I would put Stymie in a category that would be like the market value is the game, basically.
Right.
Like I would only trade it if it was basically going to give me a surefire way to win.
Right. And who's going to pay any cost? Stymie doesn't do anything for the person who receives Stymie.
Yeah.
It only hurts the Arborek, which means you're never going to sell it for
it's
the game.
like, well, I could see this situation coming up if it's like the players can't tell that you have a path to victory, and they are maybe obsessed with stopping you on the plastic front, so they're willing to make some trade with you that, I mean, this is a weird situation I'm throwing out there. Essentially, all you need to know is it's bad. Don't trade it. Just don't trade it. Just don't.
It has no market value. You cannot peddle it. It's not. You're not going to use it. And let's move on because that is literally it. This is the only one where I will say that straight up and down, this is it.
I think it's such a bummer too. I think it's such a bummer that Arborek doesn't have like a promissory note that kind of helps them out a little bit, because I think they could use the help a bit. That their promissory note is like a bomb that's going to go off and destroy their whole game, basically, or take away their advantage. Yeah. Is there any argument we can make for Stymie at all?
No, I really don't think there is, because it's too much. Let's break down why it's so bad. It's too effective to stop Arborek, because every system adjacent to your stuff, if you're their neighbor, you can lock down basically everything the Arborek has. Now, I say lock down. What I mean by lock down is they're not going to be able to produce out of it. And that's their whole ability. That's their whole thing, is producing out of the ground forces, and they don't get to do that.
Yeah.
So you're going to just absolutely crush one of their entire fronts. Their whole right side, unusable. And if you decide to get more annoying and like come up on their, like, you can surround them effectively and like really hurt them. More importantly, you don't play this immediately, so they could sell it, and that person could then sell it to somebody else who can do even more impact. So let's say you sell it across the table. Oh, they're not going to hurt me with it. They're way over there. Well, all they have to do is now give it to your neighbor, and they've completely stopped your game. And they're going to do that. They're heavily incentivized to do that.
And because it's like a 5v1 type scenario, they're going to give Stymie away to the best person to give it to. And it's not even going to cost that person anything. It's just going to be like, well, obviously it's best for all of us if I just give it to so-and-so for free, because they're adjacent to like all of Arborek's stuff. And there's really no way to stop that from happening. That's literally always going to happen, unless, like, the only way I can imagine is like if somebody desperately needed a stall because it is an action to play Stymie.
Right, that's it.
That maybe you could be like, all right, so you're across the table from me and you need the stall, so I feel okay selling it to you. But I mean, good luck.
Even then.
Yeah, good luck making that work for the entire game. I feel like the stall potential, if there's not a lot of adjacency, is basically the best argument I can make, and that's a crap argument.
Yeah.
The thing about adjacency too is like, it's weird because there's a lot of rules that have to do with adjacency, but very regularly you are adjacent to everybody in every game. Like, think about anytime you've played with Mentak.
Exactly.
How often is it like, oh, well, Mentak is technically adjacent to everybody right now.
Right.
And this rule doesn't work the same way that pillage works, obviously. But it's not that hard to be adjacent to a lot of like somebody's stuff.
Especially because you have to consider the one system you're in is adjacent to 6 other systems.
Yeah.
So that's it. You can move one destroyer into one spot and probably hurt at least 2 Arborex systems.
Yeah,
at least 2. So it's just very easy to crush them. Let's jump down to another very, very similar card, but not quite as definitive as Stymie. Let's talk about Necro's Antivirus.
Yeah.
At the start of combat, place this card face up in your play area. While this card is in play, Necro cannot use Technological Singularity faction ability against you. This is where they kill your units and then can copy a tech from you. If you activate a system that contains one or more Necro players' units, return this card to the Necro player. The difference here for people is the Necro are actively using Technological Singularity in a focused sense. They're using it against you to copy some tech. Arborec are just building in general. They're not necessarily focusing it against you, which is why with Necro, if I give you antivirus, it means I'm making a deal with you alone to say, hey, I won't come to you for my tech. And depending on the faction, that might be worth a lot. If you're Jolnar, getting antivirus feels pretty good because it means, all right, he has no reason to bother with me.
Right.
So
I also think of it more as being, and I feel like the way I've seen people use it more is in a transactional sense, that it's literally like, hey, I'm going to attack you here, but to soften that blow, I'm going to give you Technological Singularity, or I'm going to give you antivirus so that I can't...
Right, do this again.
Yeah.
Let me get this one tech off of you, and then we won't do it again. I'll have considered this done. Especially early game, I think this is a perfectly good thing to do if it's like you really, really, really want to get Gravity Drive, but you aren't looking to make that horrible enemy this early in the game. Giving this away as part of like, listen, I literally only want Gravity Drive because it's going to help save my game. I have to attack you to get it, but then we can be allies. I need a safe border here, so let's go from there. And I think that is a pretty normal play.
Yeah, I want to say that antivirus, I mean, it's not used all the time. It's far from the most popular note. But this is so much better than Stymie. Like this is a lot better as far as like how it affects the Necro. It does give them a little bit of like diplomacy, which they basically don't have. They have no way to be diplomatic outside of antivirus, really, and just your own meta and your own table talk. But yeah, I think antivirus is fine. What would you say though? It's hard to say what the market value is of it, because generally Necro is going to want to, like, it'd be weird to try and buy it, but I guess what would it be worth? I don't know.
I mean, honestly, most of the time I really do feel like it's kind of the situation you laid up where you're almost giving it away for free because
to soften the blow.
You're softening the blow. You're softening the meta. This is Necro has to play the meta like this. You're kind of reliant on making sure you don't look too much like an enemy or leaning fully into being the enemy of the people or whatever. Alternatively, I mean, it can be like you can attach like trade agreement, getting a trade agreement. I don't even think that's, I don't know what you could earn. Like you're already you're hurting them or I don't know. It's such an interesting one to like break down.
I got a question because at the start of a combat, does this include space combat and ground combat?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So
yeah, you can do it in either instance, and the timing of that.
No. I mean, playing antivirus, is that going to cover you for the space combat and the ground combat?
Oh, does it cover you for the entirety of the thing?
Yeah. That's my question.
Right. While this card is in your play area, well, you play it at the start of a combat. It is now a permanent ability, so it covers you for everything.
Oh,
the moment you play it. Yeah.
I see.
So it's a permanent solution to the Necro problem. Until you attack them, of course.
Until you attack them back, which is probably going to happen. So I don't know. I think it is worth plenty, but I think a trade agreement is good. I think there are a lot of faction promissory notes that are probably worth an antivirus. I'm not really sure why you would shop for it specifically. Because again, like if you have tech the Necro once, they're not going to give you antivirus. Right. So it's really only going to come out when they decide, like, this is a time that I'm willing to not do it.
Jolnar could be making research agreement deals with Necro to make this antivirus thing happen. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'll let you target one thing, we'll trade the antivirus, and I'll give you a research agreement. Now you're going to get 2 tech off of me. Only one of them requires an attack.
I like that because Necro's going to get Jolnar's tech regardless, and this is just Jolnar being like, I just don't want to lose. I can't lose the plastic. I don't want to. I don't want.
I can't afford to lose the plastic early.
You're gonna get it anyways. I can't stop you, and I would just rather you not be destroying my ships and killing my ground forces.
Yeah. Let's talk about one more of these types. These are all following under the category of cancel my ability. Promissory notes. And so the next one to bring up is the Mentak Coalition. The Mentak Coalition Promise of Protection is action. Play this card face up in your play area. While this card is in your play area, the Mentak player can no longer use Pillage faction ability against you. If you activate a system by the Mentak, return this card to them. So this is canceling them from being able to steal from you.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this one is I kind of consider Mentak as like you're always sort of promising protection to people, and this is just one way to solidify it. But like a kind of meta-aware Mentak probably very often is saying things like, oh, well, I won't pillage you this time. For me as a Mentak, I'm kind of trying to get away with not giving this out. This is the safeguard for someone who really, really, really needs it, but if I can keep it from being handed out, I will try to do that.
Yeah, I go back and forth on Promise of Protection a lot. Like I don't actually know whether it is smart to give it out or you know, because it's kind of like what you're saying is like you can kind of accomplish this effect on your own and then still be able to do it. But I think in a weird way, I think the can you pedal it question, which these first two we talked about, you basically can't really pedal them.
No,
unless
or one-time use by design, basically.
Yeah. And this is also that way, but I want to take that can you pedal it. I think Mentak should be willing to try and get something good for a Promise of Protection because people do want it, and if you pick the right person to give it to, if you get something good out of it, I think it can end up being better for you than it was for them.
Yeah,
basically.
Let's break down what I think is the most common deal that gets made. And I've heard people have this debate before. So Hunter, you and I are going to have the debate of, is Promise of Protection worth Hakon's promissory note, trade convoys, which allows the Mentak to now trade with anybody and gives Hakon the freedom to not be pillaged from, because Hakon's going to trade all the time. So is that deal worth it to you?
Nah, I don't think so. It's I don't see Mentak as having a real strong desire to trade with everybody early game. I think
it's very important to note for new players, just because if you gain trade convoys as a Mentak, you don't get to then automatically pillage from everybody. It just means you can do deals with everybody, but you are not treated as neighbors with everybody. And I think people do mistake that. So it's really important to have that clear.
No, but I will say this: Promise of Protection is worth a trade agreement from Hakon.
Yeah. Like, I would do that.
They're getting Promise of Protection for the entire game.
I'm getting all of my $6 up front.
Yeah. I would love that.
I could make more from you over the course of the whole game. But will I? Or can I get in Hakon's way before I would have reached that threshold? It depends on the Hakon player, too. You got to be, like, that's not a useful deal against me. Because when I'm Hakon, I like to be what I've called monogamous before. I try to make deals with as few people as I can. I don't like to make everybody fat and happy and do little deals with everyone.
Right.
Lots of players do, though. And if you have one of those Hakon players, maybe you don't want to give them Promise of Protection because they're going to do a deal with all 5 other players every single round. You're going to make 5 trade goods a round or more. I mean, like, it just depends on how it all comes out. Obviously, it has to hit that 3 threshold. But regardless, like, you could probably make more money by not giving this to Hakon. But just depends.
I don't know.
Is that $6 up front going to be worth it? Maybe so.
It gets pretty complicated sometimes, though, because, like, if you do have that type of Hakon, I want to make all those pillage bucks off of Hakon dealing with everybody. And Hakon is the only one that really has enough commodities to make deals with the entire table.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, depending on the style of Hakon, you might want them to have your Promise of Protection to encourage them to do.
That's what I was kind of thinking. I was thinking that's like that is the other logic, is like I want to encourage Hakon to make as many little trades as possible,
because every time I get one nugget off that.
Right.
Is there anything? So the other thing that Mentak does early these days is pillage off of SAR as they are making their money. Is there anything SAR can give you that's worth this, I wonder? I don't really think so, but I'm just wondering.
Really, besides, giving it to them so that they don't have incentive to go through your slice, right? Like if the SAR is your neighbor, and there's certainly a world where they're like, well, I've chosen my target to dig through, and it is you. I will have a bigger fleet than you. I'm going to crush you. Giving them promise of protection so that you're A, not becoming their target, and B, not stealing from them. That is incentive for them to not do it. But that's hard to make a deal with. You're kind of just giving it to them so that they'll leave you alone. I don't know what you get
and also,
from them.
I don't like promise of protection for what you're describing. If I was Mentac and I was worried that SAR was going to cave in, I would want support swaps. I want them to really have to think about it before attacking me. Whereas promise of protection, like the Mentac pillage ability is only really devastating to SAR early game. By the mid game, it's not that big of a deal because SAR isn't taking...
I wonder if I can get SAR's support for the throne for my promise of protection.
Yeah, but see, that wouldn't even be good because then they don't have yours. So you lose something for attacking them, and all they lose is the ability to not be pillaged. So if anything, I think if you're Mentac, you want to do support swaps, and promise of protection is not enough to kind of
not quite enough
keep them off your back. So I don't think there is a place where you give promise of protection to SAR. I think the only argument for wanting someone to have promise of protection is like Hakan if they're that type of deal maker, or even a 4-commodity faction if they are going to make a lot of deals with a lot of people, because otherwise you're just losing money. The other thing though is that promise of protection is a juicy, I think a juicy card that you could get if there is a specific faction promissory note out there that you want. I think you could get it with an early promise of protection. And I mean, I think it might even be worth, like, it could be a weird, like, I think Fires of the Gashly isn't too crazy. It's certainly worth. I don't know. I've
got all kinds of other things to say about Fires of the Gashly, but
sure.
But I think the biggest thing is with all three of these notes, when it's like I'm gonna cancel your ability, it always comes down to more meta considerations than it does actual value.
Yeah.
What you're doing is changing the board state. You're not just giving some sort of ability. You're changing our relationship, which means it's usually going to come out of some sort of relationship-based discussion.
Yeah. You know what? So, you know what I'm going to try next time I play Mentac? I'm going to try and get an early spy net from Isarl for Promise of Protection.
Interesting.
Because I don't feel like Isarl very frequently goes the, I'm going to trade with everybody route. So it's just, and also Isarl's I don't know, just by their very nature, probably the harder one to get adjacency to all the time anyways.
Right.
And for that reason, I think it might be worth it just to give it to them for an early spy net that you then keep, and then at the end of the game when they have clutch action cards, just spending it.
Yeah. So let's talk about what I would kind of consider the last wholly I'm going to stop your ability. They start to transition out of this after this one, but the Yin Brotherhood's Greyfire Mutagen is after a system is activated, the Yin player cannot use faction abilities or faction technology during this tactical action, then return this card to the Yin player. Mm-hmm. So this is the first one we've come across where it is a one shot and you're done. You're not just stopping the Yin from ever doing their thing. You do it one time during this activation, and then Yin gets their card back. So in terms of can you peddle this, you can try. This is a card worth peddling. It's not just a one and done thing, but it's also a tricky one. This one is always conditional, right? You never just sell this one. I feel like this one always gets done when the move that needs it is happening right now. This is I'm about to activate Yin space, and I need to get Yin's thing out of this. What can we do to solidify this? It's sort of like doing the trade agreement version of playing trade, and I don't want you to do any funny business, so how can we make a deal where you don't do anything crazy? This is how you approach a Yin, is listen, I want to take this, let's work out a way to make this mutual, but I need Greyfire Mutagen to make sure you're not going to indoctrinate my ground forces.
But then why, that situation that you're building, why is Yin Is it like a situation where Yin needs to occupy the space but not necessarily take the planets? Like, why would you give them...
Right. I think of it in terms of if I'm moving into Yin space and maybe we're making some sort of point-for-point trade. This is when I can consider I've used it before.
See, I personally feel like if I was playing as Yin, which I almost never do, I would probably never give Greyfire Mutagen out because I think it has a stymie factor to it, which is that the second you give it to somebody, they can now give it to somebody else and even make money off of it, probably.
Yep. Right.
And it could come bite you in the butt. It could haunt you forever. And once you've given it to somebody, you open up, even if you think it's like, oh, well, you know, they're obviously going to use it in this act. There's no way to make that binding, basically. That's impossible. There's no way to give somebody a promissory note and make it binding that they play it right now.
Yeah.
So I think you just kind of you leave yourself open to that Greyfire Mutagen becoming a chip that player can now use. Because generally, if you're giving it to them, then it must be because this is a situation where you can stand to have this used. Meaning that if they decide like, well, I'm not going to worry about it, and now I'm going to give it to so-and-so, and now it's a really big problem.
Right.
I don't know. I would say
that's why I try to only use it in the moment and have some sort of reason for it definitely getting used in that moment. But you're right to say that's a hard situation to come across, which is why you don't see Greyfire Mutagen traded very often. I don't think it is worth very much beyond like really weird positional stuff, because that's really what it's there for. Is like its main purpose is to stop indoctrinate from happening. So it has to do with either them invading one of your planets or you invading one of theirs. And yeah, I don't know. If I'm just trying to make a deal out of this outside of any context, the market value is, I don't know, probably more than a trade agreement, not quite a support for the throne kind of thing. So it's just like, it's worth a lot, and they're probably not going to buy it for a lot. They probably don't want it that bad.
Well, I mean, like...
Unless you're on Mechatol Rex.
They might want it out there, but they're not necessarily... I'm just saying, like, in a lot of situations, if it leaves your hand, I've seen it travel to other players all the time. And I don't think it's a good idea to give it out. I think if it only applied to, like maybe their ability to blow ships up, but not indoctrinate. Indoctrinate is just so important to the Yin thing. Yeah. And the fact that this is not even like this doesn't even have like this assures that people won't attack me.
Right. It doesn't do that.
This is literally supposed to be used against you in a very like obvious. Well, it's defensive and offensive, but what I mean is if you give it out, someone could literally use it to plan a very specific invasion of like your home system, and all of a sudden you can't indoctrinate. And if Yin doesn't have indoctrinate, it's not like their infantry aren't like better. They're not like soul infantry where they're just naturally better. Right. And if they don't have infantry too, then they might even be worse than what they're fighting against. So I think Greyfire Mutagen is not one to give out. Basically.
It is weirdly unique in how much it singles you out. It's more like Stymie in that respect, right? The Necro and the Mentax ones do other things for you. They open you up for kind of like, okay, I don't have to worry about that neighbor. This doesn't do that. This is just like a one time. I don't have to worry about Yin. So yeah, it's hard to convince someone to get it. It's hard for you. It's not a good idea for you to just be giving it out willy-nilly.
It doesn't have like a meta, like it doesn't have the meta score that like Promise of Protection and Antivirus both kind of carry with them.
Somewhat similar to that, but I think quite different is the Sardak Nor's promissory note, Teklar Legion. At the start of an invasion combat, apply +1 to the result of each of your unit's combat rolls during this combat. If your opponent is the Nor, apply -1 to the result of each of his unit combat rolls during this combat, then return this card to the Nor player. So the same sort of timing window, except for exclusively for ground combat, but that's the main reason you're using Greyfire Mutagen is ground combat. But this one is interesting because it doesn't only work against Sardak Nor, but it does work better against Sardak Nor.
Sure.
And that's fun, but you see it for this one. If anything, is like this is probably the second most peddled promissory note to me.
I feel the opposite. I feel like people should be peddling it more than they are, and it's not getting.
Well, okay,
I feel like it's so underrated.
It is underrated. I guess that's what I mean. Is it should be the second most.
Yeah.
Jolnar's is the most. We'll get to that. But Sardak Nor, this one, every time you're about to do a ground combat, you should, like, if you're taking a planet from somebody else, you should hit Sardak Nor up. Because why not try to get +1 to that ground combat? Because +1 in ground combat is huge. And Sardak Nor wants to only give this to you in the timing that you need it. So that's also something that's on Sardak Nor's shoulders, is every time you see somebody else invading someone, hit them up. They're probably going to want your note. They will probably pay you something for it. And because you're going to peddle it so much, maybe it's kind of a low cost. 1 trade good to give all 3 of your ground forces +1. That's pretty great.
Yep.
2 trade goods probably is still worth it. 3 is where it starts to get like, I can't swing that. So I think it is a low cost card, but because you can trade it out all the time, you're going to make a lot over the course of the game from it.
Well, you could try to. You could trade it out all the time if people were willing to trade it, but people I feel like people underestimate the power of a +1 in ground
huge.
Combat. It's a really big deal.
And especially in situations where someone if you're giving it to someone in the timing that they're going to want to use it, you can only give it to the active player, which means you can only give it to the player invading someone else.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a little clever here of, if everybody's talking about invading so-and-so's home system, you can probably get a lot of money ahead of time if you get it to so-and-so before their home system gets jumped on, because they want whatever they can do to defend their home system.
Right.
So you could probably get like 5 trade goods or whatever, get a support for the throne. Especially if we're thinking about that situation. If everybody's trying to jump on someone's home system, it's probably because they have a win in their sights.
Right.
And if support for the throne puts you in range of a win, make that offer, because they might still lose that combat. The person might still take their home system, and now you're up a point. And I think the player getting targeted might be willing to make that deal, because it might be the only thing that saves their game.
Yeah.
That's the kind of late game gambit that this promissory note can turn into. So early game, it's just like, oh yeah, worth a couple trade goods. And then by the late game, it can be the crusher, the final push you need to get support for the thrones or big, money or whatever, just all kinds of things.
Yeah, I will say this though, you got to be a little bit careful. Peddling it, I think is great, and obviously when somebody needs it, that's the best time to do it. But be careful, because this does have an element of kind of similar to Greyfire Mutagen, where if it gets out there, somebody might be like, no, I'm not actually going to spend this right now. And in fact, I'm going to sell it to your opponent so they can use it against you. Because against you, I mean, that's really bad against you.
It is really bad against you. And that, I definitely agree with that. You need to be trying to play small ball with this, right? It's like, nope, only give it to them as they need it right then and there, and convince them that they will definitely use it. Obviously, someone can get cheeky and be like, yeah, I am going to use it right now. Get it, and then not play it.
Yeah.
But more often than not, they're going to see the value in using it. Obviously, don't try to sell it to someone who's about to send 5 ground forces against 1. They don't need it, and they're probably going to hold on to it if you try to give it to them, because there's no need for them to have a +1 to their combat rolls.
Also, and I will stand by this forever, I still think that it is worth a research agreement from Jolnar. And it's not because it wouldn't be, if Jolnar didn't have the -1, it wouldn't be worth that much. But the fact that this fixes a problem that Jolnar has, Jolnar is always, the Achilles heel of Jolnar is ground combat. They always lose that.
Right.
And this
puts
literally
them on even footing.
I would even give it out if I was Jolnar, I would be fine with getting this even before I needed it, just so that I knew that I had it, so no one can use it against me.
Yep.
I've got it. If I need it, I can use it to defend myself a little bit better. I can use it against people. And Sardak is so thirsty for tech that I think if I was playing a Sardak and Jolnar was like, all right, I want Teklar Legion. I don't even need to use it right now. I'm probably going to keep it for a while, but I will give you research agreement round 1. Yep. I would have no choice but to say yes. I would definitely say yes.
Yeah, I would definitely do that.
And I think
it
that
fixes both of their problems. It's both of them fixing their primary weakness.
Yeah, and the thing is,
away.
people playing Jolnar, I feel like, don't make that trade. And I have seen that bite them in the butt, because they don't have any other way without getting, if they get a morale boost, okay, sure. But that means every ground combat, you're going to need something like that to help you out.
You're going to wish you had it.
And you're gonna get the thing about research agreement that we will talk about eventually is you just get to trade it over and over. It's supposed to you just pedal it. So so what? You gave it to Sardak, but then you got it back in round 2. You can trade it to somebody else for more money, or you could even trade it round 1 again. People do that.
Right. So let's talk about. We're kind of getting to the last of the take away a power thing, and this one is unique in that for one round, the Nalu Collective Gift of the Prescience is at the end of the strategy phase, meaning after all strategy cards have been picked. Place this card face up in your play area and place the Nalu 0 token on your strategy card. You are the first in initiative order. The Nalu player cannot use telepathic faction during this game round. Return this card to the Nalu player at the end of the status phase. So for one round, you are 0 in initiative order. We have always said, don't give this out because it'll cost you the game as Nalu and you'll be handing the game to somebody else because they will be able to do it. Now, we've seen instances where this gets traded out. There are obviously caveats, but the general rule of thumb is if it's round 1 through 4, don't sell this. That's not the scenario where it's worth selling.
I have seen, though, I have seen people basically promise the Nalu that they need it so that they can go first in the next round in the early game and be like, listen, I really have to, and be able to, based on trust, turn this card into something you can deal. Now, that obviously has to do with trust, and this is another one of those cards.
And I've seen that deal made and then immediately broken. So
sure. But, because there is no way to make that binding whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I've seen that. I think people are trying to make Gift of the Prescience more tradable than it is, and get away from that kind of nuclear meltdown aspect of it.
Right.
But
we've obviously seen scenarios where the Nalu knows they have it in the bag anyways. They don't need the 0 initiative to win. And if you are in that situation and you're going to, you're going to get what you need to win out of selling it, obviously, that's going to be good, but you need to have it pretty on lock. You need to have that guaranteed. Don't do it on a risky whim that maybe you'll win. I don't think that's the way to do it, unless it is your only option, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, it's a very juicy card. But the thing is, I would never really, it's a weird card because I would assume if I wasn't the Nalu that I can't get it, basically, that I can't buy it.
Yeah, that's how I approach it, is why even ask them for it? There's no way I'll ever get it from them. But some players will. So obviously ask for it. But if you are Nalu, you should never give it out, in my opinion, unless the situation is obvious.
Yeah. I'll say this. If I... So, let's say I'm, trailing, I might try and get Gift of the Prescience, and maybe even succeed if I can just make the case listen, there's no way I'm going to win, in order to go for a, grab Imperial with the 0 type play, where it's I'm going to try and swing round at the end with the 0 token.
Right.
But obviously that's a very specific situation, and if Nalu can tell that's what you want to do, they're probably not going to give it to you. But I don't know. It's a weird card. It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah. So that one is bridging our gap into copy abilities promissory. That's the last one where it's Nalu, you're going to lose that ability if you give up this promissory note. You will lose it. Someone else will gain it. From here on out for a little bit, it's all abilities where there's no downside to giving this out. It's all, I'm going to let you copy the gist of one of my abilities. So first up, we've already talked about it a little bit. Hakon's Trade Convoys. As an action, play this card face up in your play area. While this card is in your play area, you may negotiate transactions with players who are not your neighbor. And then if you activate a Hakon's players system, you have to get rid of this. This one, I feel like everybody always wants.
Yeah, I think it's a little overvalued personally. I don't think that it's really that big of a deal to be able
to... For certain factions, it saves your early game. Arborek. Arborek might want this because if they didn't get trade and they need those money and they have no way to get adjacent to who had trade, if they can somehow get trade convoys, that can save their round 1.
It's just a weird situation that Hakon's going to be going to be all right with giving you trade convoys and creating another partner when they can just deal with you on their own.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think I think if not for the nature of the rest of Hakan, this would be a good card. Oddly enough, it's like I actually feel like if a different faction could give out this ability, that it would maybe make more sense. Because the Hakan gives this out and they create a kind of like rival when it comes to trading.
Yes.
But also,
now they always have more commodities than them. I mean, your best bet is to give it to somebody with like 2 or 3. Try not to give it to somebody with 4 commodities, because then you're really giving yourself a rival.
Right, but then like, why would they want it? Like, I don't know. It's one of those things where like, if you can get someone to buy it off of you, I think you should definitely take them up on that. I don't think Hakan loses a lot by giving this out. I really don't. Like,
no. Here's what I do think you lose. I don't think you should. We've seen this happen. I think it was in the tournament. I don't think Hakan should let this get into Jolnar's hands. I think that's a very bad idea.
I agree with that.
Jolnar being able to trade research agreement with anyone at any time is not a good way to stay in the economic advantage. Jolnar will fly ahead of you if that becomes the case.
I agree. I think we already see plenty of games where Jolnar has E-res siphons and then like is beating Hakan in the like gold game.
Yeah. Right.
So I mean, yeah, this is a bridge too far. But basically anybody else, I'm not too scared about it.
Right.
And really,
I would hesitate to give it to Soul as well for similar reasons. Their promissory note can be pretty useful. Well, we'll talk more about their promissory note, but like the idea that I see Soul players fairly often give out their promissory note pretty often, and try to get some money for it. And if they can do that with anybody at any time, it's an advantage that the Federation of Soul do not need.
Yeah, but the thing about the Soul promissory, well, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. But like they do have to coordinate their command. What I'm saying is that you might be right.
There's an added level of.
Here's all I'm trying to say is with Jolnar giving them trade convoys is like they're already maybe even going to beat you at your own game, and helping them at all seems stupid. Right. Soul, maybe, they're like second place as far as like the second worst to give it to after Jolnar. Right. But the distance there between Jolnar and Soul is vast. Like it's not like Soul is just on the verge of being like a competitor in the way that Jolnar is, and then you give them this and it really pushes them over the edge. I just think that they are also going to get a lot of use out of this, but I think it's survivable because they have to coordinate military support with their command counters, basically.
Yeah, right.
So,
next up is the Barony of Letnev's war funding. At the start of a round of space combat, the Letnev player loses 2 trade goods. During this combat round, reroll any of your dice, then return this card to the Letnev player. It's worth noting, the Letnev player does not have to have those 2 trade goods for you to use this ability. If they have no trade goods, you can still play war funding and gain this ability, which means it's very easy typically for Barony to control that and set up situations where this is a great thing to sell to someone at the start of a round of space combat, right? This is another one sort of like the Sardak note where it's like, hey, right now I'll give this to you for something so that you can have better luck in this combat coming up.
Yeah.
That being said, a reroll is not a +1, is worse than a +1. A reroll is no guarantee of anything, which means any ability in the game that doesn't guarantee you anything is always very difficult to sell.
Yeah.
Because you can't guarantee it's going to do me any good.
What's the market value of this? Like, how do we even determine that? I actually feel like our market value, like, for all of these cards is almost impossible to determine. It's more like just bringing in the idea. But, I think because really, market value has to do with how desperately you need this. And I can imagine situations where you're like, all right, well, I need all the help I can get, so we're going to try and get this war funding off of Barony, in which case you're probably going to pay a lot for it.
Right. If there's any, like, I think basically this and the Sardak's note are accomplishing the same thing, and Sardak's is better. Obviously, Sardak's is ground combat, this is space combat, but my point being, you're coming to them hat in hand for the same reasons. This one is worse by a lot, in my opinion. So it's just,
you know what's funny too is in this situation you can't pay Letnev any trade goods for it
They won't
like
want to do that deal. Right. If you pay them trade goods, you're just going to get them right back, and they're not going to, or they're going to lose them. You're not going to get them back, but Letnev will lose them immediately. So yeah, you can't. That is not on the table. A trade agreement could be of like, okay, you don't want the money now, you'll get the money later, yada yada. That's okay. But yeah, that's a very, very funny point to bring up. Is you should never. Barony should never sell this for trade goods because that defeats the purpose.
Doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
unless it's 3, but I don't know who's buying war funding for 3 trade goods.
I think a Letnev player might even just be willing to sell this early, just to anybody that would be willing to buy it. But I just don't know why you would buy it.
Yeah, I just don't see anyone paying very much for it. Again, because of the lack of assurance that it's gonna do you any good.
Yeah.
I don't think you can peddle it really. I don't think like you're gonna get. You can try. You can certainly try. But it's just not gonna. This is probably one of the worst notes in terms of enticing others to want it.
Yeah.
Everyone's just like, whatever.
I think if we did a promissory note tier list, Barony's war funding would go in the like lower. Like, not the worst, the bottom tier, but the one right above the bottom tier.
Right.
Where it's
you
just
might
like,
occasionally get some use out of it, as compared to Stymie is just bad. This is better than Stymie, but it still is not especially useful most of the time.
Yeah, it's probably not going to hurt you. You're probably not even going to lose those 2 trade goods if you use it, but maybe you would, and that sucks, but it's just 2 trade goods. Well, actually, 2 trade goods can be a huge deal depending on when we are at in the game, but it's just not... It's just, there's not much conversation about it because it's just like, what are you going to get for this?
Right.
Let's talk about one that is actually good, though.
Yeah, let's talk about Federation of Souls military support. At the start of the Soul player's turn, remove 1 token from the Soul player's strategy pool if able, and return it to his reinforcements. Then you may place 2 infantry from your reinforcements on any planet you control, then return this card to the Soul player. So you get to do an orbital drop.
Yes.
For free. And if the cards are right, it costs them a token. But if you're Soul, you're only giving this out when it's not going to cost you a token. If you're a smart Soul person, you will give this out after you've already spent all your strategy tokens. And I think you will give it out pretty often if people are paying the right price for it.
Yeah. I think it depends on... I'm a little picky personally about who I give this to.
Sure.
I don't want to give this to any of my direct competitors as far as like the ideal for me would be like I'm next to a Jolnar and I can give it to them because I'm not scared of their infantry that much. But I'm not giving this to like Yin or even Arborek. I'm probably not giving this to. Who else would I wouldn't give this to Sardak.
Yeah, I agree. Any of your direct competitors it's not really worth it unless it's a high price.
But what's cool is that everybody wants to have more infantry on their planets.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Jolnar is a great target for this, if anything, because they're very weak. They're always looking for something, so you could probably get research agreement for this. Maybe. Depends on the Jolnar. Some Jolnars are a little bit close to the chest with that research agreement, which is smart, but also some of them are smart to give it out all the time because you can make a lot of money, and this might be one of those things that's worth it. Getting extra ground forces on that expansion planet that is in a weak position, it's probably worth it.
And it's quite easy to not have to spend any of your strategy tokens in order to use this, especially early game. It's very easy. Where you're
that round 1, we've seen games where someone gave out military support 3 times round 1 because it's after they had done all the secondaries they needed, and it was like, all right, who wants to reinforce those newly made expansions? Everybody? Oh, I thought so. Cool. Here you go.
And that way, this is very peddleable because you might as well give it out for whatever. You might as well get stuff for free.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I see worlds where it's worth 1 trade good.
Yeah.
Because it's them. I make that case all the time. Hey, listen. You're spending the infantry $1 on 2 infantry anyways. This is just letting you not have to do it in a space dock. That alone is worth it. Now, if you can try to get 2, but I just think people are going to be very hesitant to give you more than 2. And 2 is probably the limit.
I think you do got to be a little bit careful though. Giving this out that much, I think, can bite you in the butt. You don't want people because your advantage is that you get your infantry to people or to places before they do, and you have more of them. So if you kind of give up that advantage by letting everybody else get a bunch of infantry, that's kind of rough. So here's
what I like.
You gotta be careful.
I like giving it to everybody once, I don't like giving it to anybody more than once.
Here's what I would do is I would just set a higher price for it than normal and trade it to somebody that really needed it. Like I would be like, this is worth a trade agreement, and everybody scoffs. But then like I target somebody, I'm like, listen, you really need this.
Right.
Like if you had 2 infantry there, like really stress how good that this can be for somebody to get infantry out early and on like a forward planet. And then just really stress that and try and get a trade agreement. I think it can be worth a trade agreement. It
I think
just depends on how you
be. I think that's a hard sell. If I put myself in the other player's shoes, I'm pretty hesitant. I'm one of those people who's very hesitant to give up.
If you're me,
for 2 infantry.
If you're me and you're trying to sell it, no one will buy it from me because nobody buys anything from me ever, no matter what I say it's worth. But I think a normal person could probably sell it for something as juicy as a trade agreement, especially if we're talking about like a 2 or 3 commodity faction, not a 4.
Yeah. Let's talk about another ability that is just copying someone's ability. The Xcha political favor is when an agenda is revealed. And now, if you're reading your card at home, it may say after, but it has been errataed to when. It is in the when an agenda is revealed timing window, which is before after, which means it is not during riders. Just had to get all that out there. Then you remove 1 token from the Xcha player's strategy pool and return it to his reinforcements. Notice it does not say if able, like the Federation of Souls promissory note does say. Then discard the revealed agenda and reveal 1 agenda from the top of the deck. Players vote on this agenda instead. Then return this to the Xcha player. This is quash, except for Xcha has to have the strategy token. If Xcha has 0 strategy tokens, you cannot use this ability. Which is important because then you could infinitely quash, and that's ridiculous, and it breaks the agenda phase. So, but more importantly, this one is really interesting, and I feel like we haven't cracked the code on political favor yet. I feel like there's more to learn about what you can get away with political favor. I'll say what I've been thinking recently is I don't love quashing agendas, but I would much rather always sell political favor at the timing window for quash. And because sometimes you probably wouldn't mind quashing it, but if you can get someone else to quash it for you by getting money for the political favor and pretending you don't want it, that's going to be good. Now, a lot of people are going to call that bluff. A lot of people are going to say, I think you want this quash just as bad as I do, so you should just do it. I'm not going to pay you for political favor.
Why wouldn't you just pay them to quash? Because it's basically the same thing.
I mean, you could do the same thing. I guess it's just all the same situation. But I guess that's a fair point. Of you wouldn't just be giving out political favor in that timing window. You would be making them pay you to quash.
Yeah.
If we're looking at it ahead of time, what's always great is if you played politics and you're looking at the deck, I don't know, I think you can start to kind of wheel and deal with information ahead of time and maybe make money off of political favor. I think there's a world where that works. In general, I think everybody always knows Xcha wants to get paid to quash, not to just quash. So this is how you promise that for the future, rather than it happening in the exact moment the agenda was revealed.
Here's something useful. Let's talk about factions that we know that would probably want to try and buy political favor from Xcha if Xcha's willing to sell it. My first thought is Ghost. If I'm Ghost, I'm not trying to get hit by those really bad wormhole agendas.
Yep.
And I think if I'm playing really careful and Xcha was willing to part with it for a reasonable price, I would maybe want to get political favor.
Yep. Winnu on Mechatol Rex. Honestly, anybody on Mechatol Rex, but especially Winnu. You hate to see the nuke drop. The other big agenda I'm thinking of is economic equality, which isn't going to be faction specific then, but anybody who's like banking trade goods does not want to see that economic equality. So usually Hakan, probably Mentak, maybe Jolnar, lots of other factions can have a tendency to stack up trade goods. And if you're doing that, it's going to be very nice to have political favor in your pocket, because getting hit with economic equality always sucks. Because when you're the only player at the table with a big stack of trade goods, you're never going to win that economic. Oh, the economic equality is already going to hurt you. That's the problem with economic equality is you're losing your stack 100% of the time. You might get 5 back or you might get 0, but you're not keeping your stack. So quashing it is your only way out.
Only way out. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. The other thing that Hakan can do, though, which is just like try and buy a veto. So like you kind of got two routes there.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think. But what's weird about this way of thinking is that it's kind of it's a deal you're making based on if something happens, and you don't know for sure. And the other thing though is a situation where you would know for sure. Like, let's say you play politics, you see, oh God, there's an agenda that is going to hurt me. Well, why wouldn't you just bottom it? Like, why you gotta? Right. So like, it's kind of weird. There's not really a situation where you're going to have the foresight to know that you need political favor.
Right.
Yeah.
What I was saying earlier is if I'm extra and I have politics, I can look at those things, and if I see that bad wormhole agenda, I now get to bring it to the table with ghosts, right? I get to look at ghosts and go, listen, I could put this on top. You can either pay me to not put it on top, or you can pay me to get my political favor, or some variation of that. But I think it's just that the political favor is an extra piece of ammo in that gun of let's work out how to make this a deal. Right. So I think political favor is slightly increased in value if you are extra with politics, because you can trade information in a more valuable way.
Yeah. Is it more on extra to put this out there, or is it more on everybody else to buy it from extra? That's the part
I think it is on extra to put it out there, because the thing is, at the end of the day, extra is the one controlling how many command tokens they have in their strategy pool. So when I'm up against an extra, I'm usually just not looking for it, because I just assume they'll probably have some and they can quash, or they won't, or whatever. Like, all it comes down to is they're the ones in power of actually letting this ability be usable. That's what makes this one a little bit unique. It's one of the few ones that you may never ever get the opportunity to use it, because if extra never leaves strategy tokens in their strategy pool,
right? But why? But they wouldn't do that though. You're gonna need to leave some tokens in your strategy pool almost every time, because you redo your strategy
just
tokens
before you go into the agenda phase.
Just before you go into the agenda phase. So like, you would have to be deciding that you're not doing any secondaries the next round, and that's probably not going to happen.
Probably.
But so
I still think it's on extra to try to sell it.
I think in having this discussion with you, I've realized that I do not like this card, and that if I was extra, I would pretend I don't have it, because
just sell your quash.
Yeah, like you maintain a lot more control selling your quash. If you give out political favor, what you're basically saying is, my ability, if this is used at all, it's going to be used not in my favor, because if I didn't want it to go through, I would just quash it myself. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm going to have this used not in my favor, and it's going to cost me a command counter I did not count on spending, which is weird. So I feel like for extra, it costs too much. Like it costs me, if I'm the extra player, it costs me too much to sell this. Like, I'm like, well, this has a high price for me because it can be painful for me. And for the other player, it's a guarantee against something they would have no way of knowing is going to happen.
Right. And it's not even a guarantee, again, because you may not have tokens there.
At the same time, you can't actually have a transaction with extra when an agenda is revealed, correct? Is that wrong?
No, you can.
You can? So,
what's the point?
Yeah, what's the point? It's a weird one to me.
I think about this as worse than Mentac's Promise of Protection. Like we said, with Promise of Protection, Mentac can just kind of orchestrate that. And like you're saying, you can just orchestrate political favor to always be in effect.
Yeah.
You don't need to give it out, and people probably won't buy it from you. So, not worth a ton.
Yeah.
Next up, the Embers of Muat have Fires of the Gashline. As an action, remove one token from the Muat player's fleet pool and return it to his reinforcements. Then gain your Warsun unit upgrade technology card. Then return this card to the Muat player.
It hurts.
That cost is really high. Losing a fleet pool is worse than any. If it were coming from either of the other pools, it wouldn't be as bad. If it was a strategy counter, this would be worth a lot more. But because it's a fleet pool, you never know when they're going to pop that and when you're going to have your ships at capacity. So if you give this out, you have to pretend you have one less fleet pool until they use it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, this is going to cost you not only the command counter, but all the ships and systems that just went down below your fleet pool. So this one is a high price, sort of, and it's giving someone a lot. Now, we've talked before on the show, probably during the Muat guides, about how it's also maybe not a bad idea to give it out if you can control that command counter problem, because it might get the heat off of you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else having War Suns, if they're across the map from you, maybe isn't the worst thing in the world. Because right now, everyone looks at you as the person with War Suns, and that scares them, and they don't like you.
Right, but also you're giving someone else War Suns,
right?
Which is
so it's not great.
yeah. I don't know. I wish that Muat had a promissory note that you could peddle that was not so nuclear. Basically, I feel
it's
like
really sad to me that this is just straight up and down a worse version than Research Agreement.
Yeah,
Jolnar could go research War Suns and give out Research Agreement before they research War Suns,
and it's
accomplished this exact same thing, and they lose nothing. And yeah, it's really annoying that Muat got screwed over so bad here.
Yeah, this would have been a really good opportunity to like give Muat a fighting chance. There's two decisions that I feel weird about with promissory notes, and it's Muat and Arborek. Why did these two factions that
are already getting dunked on?
They're struggling. They needed the help. Please be nice to them. And they just have these like kind of meanie pants faction promissory notes. It's hard.
Yeah, it's really rough. I hate it for Muat. I always wish there was a way to get this out there, but that threat of losing your fleet supply is always bad, and it's never good. And also, here's the other problem with it. People aren't going to pay a lot for it because they have to consider, what's it going to cost me to get the War Sun tech, and then I have to spend $12 on a War Sun.
Mm-hmm.
I can't give you $5 for just the tech.
Yeah.
That's just too much.
Right.
And it's not worth very much, which means, is it worth Muat giving it out? If it's going to cost you one command counter and fleet supply, in theory, it's worth 2 to 3 trade goods, right? Because that pays for the command counter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if people will buy it for 3 trade goods.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I am Muat and I'm doing very well in command counter economy, which is
rare.
I mean, that's cool, I guess, if that does happen.
You did it.
Yay. Then maybe I sell this, but I still kind of want to be paid for it handsomely. I want 4 trade goods. I want maybe 6 trade goods. I want a lot of trade goods for it.
I want a lot of money for this very valuable tech. But
it costs me a command counter from Fleet Pool, which I guess if I plan for isn't that big of a deal.
I think the other problem is this card is as weak as War Suns are. Because anyone who's trying to buy this has to make the War Sun argument to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the War Sun argument is, well, it takes a long time to go down that path, and you're cutting that out. So that's great. But it's still expensive, and it still is going to die to a direct hit very, very, very easily. So what point is a War Sun not worth it?
What's the market value of this round 1? That's kind of what I'm interested in right now. What if Hakan was like, I'll give you my trade agreement. I'll give you my trade agreement for it. Well, would you give it out?
I mean, yes, because round 1, I'm in no threat of the fleet pool thing being a problem. I have 3 fleet supply. I have 1 big ship, and that's it. So round 1 is the best time to give this thing out. But it's also when people have the least to give, sort of. I do think you have to think about it needs to be a faction promissory note for a faction promissory note of value. And it needs to be something that's going to save your round 1. Mm-hmm. So if that is the Hakan or a 4 trade good trade agreement from the person who's going to play trade, if you're going to guarantee yourself $4 for a carrier and 2 more infantry, I think I'd give out Fires of the Gashly. I think I would, because my round 1 is so very, very bad. Yeah. I think people are going to disagree with that, but I think that Muat has to make tough decisions like that to save their early game. If you can make a good round 2 for yourself, Fires of the Gashly is worth it.
I can't believe we put ourselves in a position where we're going to have to write another Muat guide. Basically, I can't believe that.
Don't worry, I will shoulder that burden for you.
Yeah. That's a little reveal. I will not be writing the Muat guide. I don't know.
I feel like without revealing it, we revealed that. That's been revealed.
Surprising no one. I'm never playing that faction again. I don't care.
That's okay.
You would have to do another Space Kitty episode in order to make me do it, and I hope to God that nobody does that.
Let's talk about the guide I'm not going to do and you're going to do.
Yes.
By talking about the Ghost of Crius IFF promissory note. At the start of your turn during the action phase, place or move a Crius wormhole token into either a system that contains a planet you control or a non-home system that does not contain another player's ships. Return this card to the Crius.
What a funny note, because this one is for you. It's like you want them. You don't want. You just want to give this to people.
Yeah, this is the only note where you will give this to someone for nothing, and with strict instructions of how you want them to use it. This is one of the rare cases of a promissory note that is an ability that you don't get unless you get your faction tech. This is your faction tech, and it's better than your faction tech because it happens during the round instead of during the status phase, and you can do it whenever, more or less. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this one is the most interesting promissory note in the game to me, for that reason. I love it. I love trying to peddle it. I love trying to make use of it. It always sucks when someone decides to hold on to it against my will.
Right.
Because I love trying to use it in weird, wacky ways. That being said, in terms of, it's nice that it benefits you because it's probably not worth much by itself. It's very rarely worth anything unless it's like an endgame scenario where everyone's like, we have to stop the Barony Aletnev ghosts. Give me that promissory note so that we can put the alpha wormhole adjacent to Barony's home system so that we can jump on them. That's like the only situation where the table is looking to you for help with this promissory note.
But yeah, it's funny because I feel like I almost want to say, can you peddle it? Yes, you should peddle it, and the market value is 0. Whatever.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
It's not.
Who cares? The market value is the fact that you're getting to move these wormholes around in ways that probably benefit you. The thing about it, too, is even if you're giving it to somebody else and they're using it to their benefit, it is probably still benefiting you. It is benefiting you. No matter where that wormhole goes, unless it's inside a supernova, you're probably benefiting from it because you just want wormholes everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I think that even if they think that it's helping them, it's actually probably going to help you, especially if we're talking early game where it's like, who knows where you're going to want to get to.
Yep.
So even if they are like, all right, well, I'm going to put it right next to you. I'm going to put it in your slice. I'm like, cool,
love it.
That's a place where I get a plus. Like you can't.
That's what I pay. I literally pay people to do that round.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I pay. I give you Crius IFF and I give you 2 trade goods and I say, put this on New Albion Star Point right in front of my Crius gate. I want it at the center of my pie slice. Will you please do that for me?
Yeah, if anything, what you want to do is to try and not have to pay somebody to get them to use it.
Right,
the market value
trick them into putting it where you want it.
The market value is -2, and you need to try and get it up to 0. So yeah, I would try and get away with not paying people to do it though. I would go with that like play like just kind of do it amicably. Like my discussion would be something like, hey, I want to give you Crius IFF. I'm not going to tell you where to place the wormhole. Place it wherever you like, but regardless of where you place it, it's going to be good for me. And here's what I would like, obviously. But I want this to be good for you. You just like look at them, see who has a wormhole, who has Quan or Lodor, and then just basically be like, do you want to make that a little bit juicier?
Yep.
And it is an early game card. We should note that it's a lot easier to use when people don't have their ships everywhere.
Right, because they cannot put it somewhere where where other people's units are. It's got to be a planet you control or a non-home system with no players' ships.
Yeah.
So for you to use it to your advantage, you have to think about it in a really weird way because you can't let your stuff be there before you try to get them to put a wormhole in your favor. So then later game, it's like it's probably only useful for them if you're thinking about it that way. It's going in their slice probably in the late game. Whereas early game, you can get funkier with it because it can go kind of anywhere.
Isn't it cool that it turns out I'm a ghost boy?
Yeah, and it's weird how that came around.
We switched places there when it came to ghosts and Muat.
That was basically the trade, wasn't it? I don't remember if that's exactly how we worded it, but like you were like, I'm getting rid of Muat. What is it going to cost me or whatever? Mm-hmm. And it was like, well, I don't want Crius anymore.
Yeah.
So let's talk about another one that's kind of like this, which is the Isarl's Spy Net. Talk about things where you're earning the faction tech and not a faction ability. Isarl's Spy Net is at the end of your turn. look at the Asarl player's hand of action cards, choose one of those cards, and add it to your hand. Then return this to the Asarl player. So you get their, I'm going to forget which one it is, their Magion implants, right?
Sure.
Or is that Transparent still plating? Nope. I don't ever remember. Magion implants, which is their like very late game tech. So getting that ability is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think this is one to try and get from the Asarl if you can. Because if you
I say at the end of your turn? It is at the start of your turn. I do not know why what I typed out had end. Let me please errata that. Asarl, Spynet at the start of your turn.
Yeah,
at the end of your turn makes no sense.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Not at all. I think this is... So, like, we've seen Asarl use this in some interesting ways where people use it to sell. They use it like they're using Hakan's ability to sell action cards, where they'll be like, all right, so I want you to take this specific action card if you agree to just take this one. So that's interesting. I think it was Schroeder was the first person I saw do that.
Yeah.
Pretty cool way to use it, and I think the market value of it increases if you can get people to do it that way. It is going to cost you something if you just want to deal it out the normal way, and that, somebody might hold it till the end, and then at the end use it, and it might really hurt you. Right. But, I don't know. I think this is one of the better, faction note cards as far as, how much it's worth. I think it's worth quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that makes it interesting to me is I feel like I only ever see it used in that cheeky way.
Yeah.
I very rarely see a Asarl who's just like, I need to get out of a tough spot. I guess maybe my Spynet, is that going to be worth it to not have this bad thing happen or whatever? That's occasionally the case, but more often it's like what you're describing of, I need to get a card to somebody, and the only way Hakan's not in the game, so I got to do it this weird, funky route.
You know what? When I would use it, I would sell it if I'm Asarl and I'm looking at my hand and I'm like, this hand is so good. Like, it does not need to be this good. Like, I don't even if there are times when you play Asarl and your hand gets out of control and you've got 3 sabotages or something crazy like that, and then several other where it's this hand's so good and I don't even know what of this I'm gonna need, and I'm definitely not gonna need all of this.
Time to make some money.
Yeah, let's make some money. Let's get something tangible for this, because every action card you don't use by the end of the game as Asarl that was a waste that you had that. You didn't need to have. Well, it wasn't completely a waste because you had it, meaning they didn't. So that's not bad. But
that's true.
But I do think that you can loosen up with Spynet if you can kind of let your hair down with it if you just have an immaculate hand.
I will say I find it very hard to think that way when I'm playing Asarl. I'm a little bit more on what you were just saying, which is just every card I have is something they don't have, and I want to keep that. Even if I'm not using the utility of all these cards, at the very least, someday they will be worth a stall. Right. I can just stall with it if it's not very good, and if it is good, I don't see any reason to give it to them unless they're going to pay top dollar. And I think it's just hard to get top dollar for most action cards. There's a few that obviously you could get a lot for, but then they're getting a very good ability. So
see, I actually think it's smart to pay top dollar for Spynet because there's nothing. It's so for sure by the end of the game, Asarl is going to have a card that you need.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
you're going to get something really good out of it. You might as well try and get them to give it to you.
I mean, what you should try to do is try to get it for cheap early game and then hold on to it till the late game and wait for Asarl to kind of prune a nice little deck and then use it against them. I just don't know why Asarl would give it out early.
I would give it out for 6 trade goods maybe.
That's a lot.
Early game.
I can't imagine I would buy it. I'm not that player. I don't think I'd buy a Spynet for 6 trade goods.
Yeah, it's what's weird too is that a lot of the factions that maybe have the money to buy that are probably just gonna have really good action card hands anyways too.
Right.
So I don't know. It's a weird one. But also what's cool about Spynet is it's kind of a defense against Magion too, because it's basically saying hey, if you steal it, I'll steal it back, or maybe I won't even steal it back. I'll take something worse from you. Right. So I think I could maybe see myself using it in that way. Of just being listen, I'm not going to Magi on you, and this is how we'll cement that deal. Is you give me something for Spynet, and I'll give you Spynet.
Yeah, it's like a promise of protection in that way of just let me give you this, and you don't have to worry about Magi on. I like that.
That requires that's some trust right there. But anyways,
yeah. Next up is the big one, but we've talked about it enough so far that I don't think we will have to actually talk about it that long, is the University of Jolnar's research agreement. After the Jolnar player researches a tech that is not a faction tech, gain that tech, then return this card to the Jolnar player. It's worth noting that Jolnar buys 2 tech per technology pop. They can sell this in between those 2 techs, so they could, in theory, give away research agreement twice per time that tech is played. There's also the action card that lets you research tech. This can also pop off during agendas. There's all sorts of opportunities that Jolnar can try to sell this, and you can probably sell it for a decent amount because there's a lot of players who very badly want specific tech, especially early game.
This frickin' note is the cherry on top of the ridiculous sundae that is the Jolnar. It's like they have so many advantages already, and they really needed the best promissory
by
note.
Far
by a
best
country mile. By a country mile, it's the best.
Yeah,
it's so good.
What can you get? What's the market value? Boy, like all kinds of things. It's it depends on the faction.
And you peddle it. So I mean, just be smart about setting your price for it. But also, you can come down. You can Sam Walton this stuff. You can come down. you really could. Like it's like well. Like, I think my research agreement play is, what is it worth? Well, what do you have?
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. I agree completely.
I'm gonna be kind of a Bernie Sanders about it, and just kind of like, let's do some sort of proportional based on your income. Well, if you're poor, then it's not gonna cost you everything.
Right.
It's gonna cost
I
you
want
something.
you to buy it more than anything. More than I have a set price for it. I just want you to buy it and use it right away.
Yeah. And everybody wants it.
And what's interesting about this one, then, is it makes you make funny little games of chicken with what tech you end up buying. You want people to want to use it because you want to get it back so that you can sell it again. So that's why you try to sell it out before you get hypermetabolism, because, it's fine if one person gets hypermetabolism at the same time as you, as long as you get that card back and can sell it again. Same thing for things like Gravity Drive. I don't know, the different factions that really want transit diodes. That's kind of like a funny little thing that happens to some people, is transit diodes is very important. Dreadnought 2 is a big one. Like, keep those key tech in mind, and like, you really do want to use it on those, because nobody's gonna use research agreement to get Magen unless it's the last red they need to accomplish an objective or whatever. But in most situations, you need to like tease them with some juicy tech so that they will use it and that you can sell it again.
Yep, and just over and over,
and you're going to make way too much money, and it's going to be disgusting, and everyone will hate you for it.
It's
so you might run. Honestly, this is the thing too, where the meta, depending on your group, the meta might turn against you. You might start getting people that refuse to buy it because they don't want to play that game. It's like how you and I used to treat Hakan. But that doesn't. It never works. There's always somebody.
There's always somebody that needs it real bad. Like if I'm Sardak and you come to me round 1 as Jolnar. I'll give you it. I'll give you anything, please.
Whatever you want, man.
Whatever you need, that's fine. You can have it.
Next up is the Clan Asar's Rog's Call. After you commit 1 or more units to land on a planet, remove all of the SAR player's ground forces from that planet and place them on a planet controlled by the SAR player, then return this card to the SAR player. This is another one of those ones.
Funny old one.
I don't feel like we've figured this one out.
No.
It's just weird. I don't want to say it's just straight up bad, but it's probably just straight up bad, and you're not going to sell it to people.
I just think people haven't really figured out when's a good opportunity to really use this.
Right.
Like, it seems kind of obvious, like, well, it's obvious when you would do that. But, like, if I'm taking planets away from SAR, why do I also want to be nice and, like, not kill their ground forces? Like, if I can already win, but then if the inverse is true and it's like, well, I actually can't win, then why is
would
SAR giving up the...
Yep.
Like, so it's like you're making a deal for a planet, basically.
Right.
It could be like a control objective thing. Like if I'm making a deal with SAR to get this planet for a control objective, I could see that. And then you're like solidifying that, but that's a very specific deal that doesn't happen based on the fact that this is SAR. You know what I mean? Like
another specific one I can think of is the Mechatol Rex situation. If SAR's parked on Mechatol Rex or whatever, and they're going to retreat out of the combat. I mean, in most cases, here's the problem with it, is in most cases, if they're retreating, if you're like making a deal to take these planets, they're retreating ships away, and they're going to pick up their ground forces when they retreat. It's not a problem. But it's just rare for SAR to have a planet with a bunch of ground forces on it.
Yeah.
If they're a really smart SAR player, they'll have like one ground force on every planet. And so then all you're doing is moving one ground force. And so it just doesn't feel like much. So like this is very, very rarely worth hardly anything. And if anything, I see it more often as something SAR offers for free so that they don't lose their ground forces.
Yeah.
And that's the only situation it's used, is like, you're bringing 3, I only have 1, you're going to win, but do you want to reduce the risk of you even losing one of them so that I also don't lose one? I will give you this for free.
Okay, well, maybe we should say this, because maybe the key to this card is because I think you paying, like, let's say I'm going to give you Rog's Call and a trade good, even to save one ground force, that could be worth it sometimes. If I've got excess trade goods and I have the perfect place to put that ground force, so remove all of, and then place them on so they play, so that's kind of, all right, never mind. You can't use it in that way.
Right.
The opponent places it.
Right. It's hard to use it. It's just because they're going to put it somewhere not useful, or they're going to, I don't know. It's just a weird one, and you'll probably never make money off of it. That's how I think about it. When I have it, I don't think of that as one of my money makers. My money maker is my basic ability of, I'm going to take that planet back later and I'll get a trade good for it.
Yep.
Next up is the Winnu Acquiescence. At the end of the strategy phase, exchange one of your strategy cards with the strategy card that was chosen by the Winnu player, then return this card to the Winnu player. This one is most often used when Winnu gets Imperial because they're sitting on Mechatol, and you get an opportunity to take that Imperial away from them so they don't get to score the point. That's kind of the gist of the idea of this one. That being said, it's a really tough one for Winnu to give out, but because Winnu is such a desperate faction, it's probably got a value, depending on the player.
Yeah.
I will sell Acquiescence if I can save my round 1, or save my round 2, or save my round 3, because all 3 of those rounds are probably in a lot of trouble.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that I think this is an early game. Winnu sells this, hoping that they just get blocked once, or like early in or mid game from taking Imperial.
Right.
But the other thing that's scary about it is that this is also one of those things that could get traded around, and like the value of it could fluctuate after you give it out.
Someone else is going to make more money off of it than you are going to make off of it.
Yeah, because if it's somebody that like really wants to get Imperial, they're going to be looking at it like, oh, I'm buying Imperial and also blocking the Winnu. So I don't know. It's a scary card. It's not as nuclear as Muat or Arborek. No, actually, it's more nuclear than Muat, probably. It probably is costing you more, because this is literally costing you points most of the time.
Right.
But I also wouldn't see it as devastating as Gift of the Prescience.
Right. It's weird to play against this, too. When you know someone else has it, you start thinking about, like, well, do I want to take the thing that's most useful for me if it's also most useful for them, or do I take my second pick because I know it's not quite as useful for them?
Yeah.
Right. Do I give it to Jolnar, and now I start taking tech a lot because Jolnar like doesn't care if I have tech, so they're not going to use it on that. But that's like not a good headspace to be in. That's not doing anything. That's not forward progression. That's just like you're getting too gamey on your own when you don't need to. I think you just should take what you were going to take.
You know what I think is the good way to try and use this is to sort of use it to get outside of the speaker token deal.
Right.
So let's say I'm Winnu, I'm the speaker, and I don't really need it. Let's say it's like round 2, and I'm like, it's not very important for me to be the speaker right now. What could I get out of making like the person in last pick or 5th pick get speaker, or be able to pick whatever they wanted?
Well, I'll tell you what I think is the actual normal situation you're describing. Is I have speaker, and the player to my right is going to attack me because I have empty planets. I almost definitely have my home system empty, or one of my other planets. I don't have a big enough fleet in the beginning.
Oh yeah,
to protect all my stuff.
Your massive fleet is
your massive fleet didn't turn up, and so your neighbor gets to extort it out of you. I think that's what happens. They threaten your home system, and you go, okay, fine, here's acquiescence. Go away.
Mm-hmm. God, that's a bummer.
I don't know what other... I don't know just selling it. I don't know that you want to sell it. I think you save it to pay someone off. I think that is the value of it, is you need that protection. You need this to save yourself. And I think a decent amount of players will call off their shot if you give them this. Now, the problem is you only get to do it once, so you better reinforce that thing on your next go-around. But it's like a ceasefire. It operates like one ceasefire. You can stop an attack that is being threatened.
It's a kind of a sad old card, really. Yeah. Even the name, it's kind of,
Acquiescence.
Well,
I acquiesce.
Mm-hmm.
In more ways than one.
Yeah.
And our final card is another weird one. I think this is the weirdest note. The L1Z1X have cybernetic enhancements. At the start of your turn, remove one token from the L1Z1X's player's strategy pool and return it to his reinforcements. Then place one command token from your reinforcements and your strategy pool. Then return this card to the L1Z1X. Why, though? Why? Why is this L1Z1? This is the ability that Dane wanted in the game and ran out of factions to give it to. So L1Z1X already had Harrow, already had great abilities, already had a good start. It was like, you know what? Just give them this weird one. This is the last one I've got left. The last idea I had. It's really hard to use. I love selling it, but it's tricky. It's just tricky. And it usually bites you in the butt, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, L1 is not known for being especially ahead on command counters.
Yeah.
If this was Necro's ability, it would be kind of awesome. Cool. That would actually be really cool. Now, obviously, Necro's ability, or Necro's Promissory Note, is kind of perfect thematically for what they do.
I'm just really surprised that this Promissory Note doesn't allow someone else to use your ability to take over a Space Dock or PDS. That would be a note of some value.
Yeah,
someone
that
gets
would be crazy.
To steal PDS.
But there's already that action card that lets you do it.
Right.
So maybe that's just that ability being in too many places. That might have been the discussion. Yeah, it's hard because it's all restricted to the strategy pool. Like if it was just like token for token, like from wherever to wherever, or like if we included the tactic pool or whatever. So I mean, but I think this is one of those ones where if you're smart and you're thinking about your resources all the time, you might be like, wait, I don't need this command token right here in my strategy pool. I wonder who would buy it off.
Right.
Like if you just realize you don't need it that round, sell it. Like somebody probably needs your strategy token in the middle of the round, but it's not
if you can get the right price for it.
It's
3 trade goods is probably worth it.
Sure.
And they'll probably buy it for that much.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't go below 3 trade goods because you're technically losing money, but
right.
But and I don't know. I go back. I don't necessarily agree with the whole like kind of magi way of looking at it.
No, I don't either. But it's I think it's an okay baseline, and in this instance, it does help keep yourself a little bit protected.
I just mean if I like sometimes it's worth it just to change the currencies, right? You know, like, like turning the command counter into trade goods. Well, now it's a more malleable currency, and even though I only got 2 trade goods out of it, now they're in the universal. You know, I can use them for anything.
Right.
So
I got them in the pot now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. We did all 17.
Yep.
Let's do some superlatives real quick. I don't think we have to like really sit here and have like debate club about all of these. I think we're going to just have opinions, but because we've already broken down all these cards, I think it's going to be kind of obvious why we feel certain ways.
Yeah.
But we've got a handful of these. So Hunter, what promissory note are you most likely to regret giving away?
It's hard not to say Stymie. I think it's a toss-up between Stymie and Gift of the Prescience.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I think we even had this argument the other day when we were prepping this. And I want to say Stymie is the one you will like regret right away. You just should have never given away in the first place. But the impact of what Gift of the Prescience will do to you, of like you could have had the win and now you completely gave away the win to somebody else, that hurts more than anything in the world. So I think the level of regret you will feel from that is greater. You will hurt more from giving out Gift of the Prescience, Nalu's promissory note.
Most likely to start a bidding war. This one's interesting.
most likely to start a bidding war, I think the obvious choice is sort of research agreement.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay, well, I'll toss out research agreement of like, I think when especially like round 1, if I'm Jolnar and I'm saying, hey, I'm going to do hypermetabolism, who wants research agreement? I think you're going to get people who are like, me. And I think there's a few tech that fall under that category of like, oh, they want it very badly.
If you do it that way and you're putting the tech out there,
yes.
you could start a bidding war that way. But I was thinking like the thing that's weird about research agreement is that it's very good, but also like you just peddle it so much.
Right. You'll get it eventually.
So like I think if people were you would have to have 2 factions that very desperately needed the same tech right now.
Right.
And then in that situation, that's a bit tricky. That's not all like. Not every faction is like, oh, I desperately need hypermetabolism and I'll pay anything to get it right now. If I was Muat, oh my God, I would pay anything to have hypermetabolism early. That would be amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, like it just depends. I think like a bidding war to me sort of suggests that like it's something that when you put it out there, everybody's going to be like, oh, I want to be the one to get that. And I actually think Fires of the Gaslight kind of has that potential in it. Of like, if you're willing to, if you're Muat and you're willing to sell it, nobody's going to be like, well, I absolutely don't. Like, because I don't want to be the one that didn't get War Sons. You know what I mean? Like, because Muat putting it out there is meaning that now somebody else is going to have War Sons in addition to Muat. And I might not even want War Sons, but I just don't want to be the one. I don't want to be the one without it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just think it's still such a hard sell to like convince myself to get War Sons. I think I would just, if Muat was trying to start a bidding war, I feel like I would just be like, nah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen here.
I just mean in that situation that like anybody would want it. It's not like even Gift of the Prescience wouldn't really start a bidding war because not everybody is going to need it right away, you know?
Right. My other one to throw out there would just be Hakon's trade convoys.
Yeah.
Especially in a world where there's like 2 or 3, 4 commodity factions at the table, they all will kind of benefit from having it. And because it's a one-time use, this is your only shot at getting it.
Yeah.
I see that a little bit.
I'll talk more about that card in a minute.
Let's talk about the most underrated. I feel like we agree because we brought it up, but I'm going to say Sardak Norse. I think Sardak Norse is the most underrated.
Teklar Legion,
it is
underrated.
A great, really very, very good promissory note that is not utilized enough. Yep. People don't buy it enough, and Sardak doesn't sell it enough.
Yep. Underrated. It's worth more than people pay for it. It's a clutch card. That's why people underrate it. It doesn't sound that good, but this is a very clutch situation in which it is useful. Yeah. I think it's helpful. If you're in a game with a Sardak Nor, basically at any point you can get morale boost for your infantry.
Yep.
And
which is the most important time to have a morale boost. That's like the main morale boost you want.
Yeah. And so like because of that potential, you need to just be factoring that in. Like, well, I could always try and buy Teklar Legion. Yep. And they're a poor faction, depending on like I feel like I've just been seeing a lot of Sardak games lately where like they get way ahead somehow.
Yeah.
But if they're not in that position, then like you're probably gonna be able to like bargain with them for it. So
right. And so finally, let's do our last one. Hunter, what is your most overrated promissory note?
Trade convoys.
Sounds like you were going to
trade convoys. I think, and I actually think it's partly my fault because I think at one point I was trying to make the argument that trade convoys was worth promise of protection. I don't know why. I don't feel that way anymore. And I don't think that. I think adjacency is easy in a lot of situations, and I think trade convoys is it's nice that it's a stall, and it's one of those situations where I think the Hakan probably needs, like, I don't know. There's something we've been running into that we don't have a term for yet, and I wish we had figured it out within this episode. We never really quite nailed it, but I think there's a situation where so when you give out a promissory note, a lot of them kind of hurt you, the person that gave it out, a little bit.
Yep.
which means that it kind of needs to clear a certain value threshold in order to be worth it to give it out. And then the other person needs it to clear a certain value threshold for it to be useful for them. Like if I have to pay everything for trade convoys, it's not really, it doesn't end up being worth, like if I had to pay too much for it. So I think that some of these cards have a problem of like those things don't sync up. Yeah. And I think Trade Convoys has that issue when we're talking about the factions that could really use it, like Arborek, where Hakan, I think, needs to get a little more than Arborek can afford to pay in order for Trade Convoys to make sense. Does that work?
That does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to throw mine out, and I did not feel this way before today, but our conversation about political favor made me start to actually think that political favor is worthless.
Yeah, I don't think it's good.
And myself was overrating it. I was trying to find value in there, but it's the Mentak problem of you can use that ability without ever giving out that card. That card serves no purpose. You don't need it.
It codifies it. I think in Mentak's in the Mentak situation, there's a dimension there that isn't present with political favor, just in the nature of the
for sure, and it makes political
rules.
Favor worse. Yeah. So I think I think if you are rating political favor at all, you've already overrated it because there's no value.
You already have your bargaining chip, which is that you can quash.
Right.
And so why would you
give that up ahead of time? Why wouldn't you just wait to get paid when it matters?
Yeah. I would rather just keep all the. I feel like I'm like really not riffing good today. Like my brain is not pumping the word. My word factory is failing me. Every time I reach for a word this episode, I feel like I've been like, wait, what? How do I talk about anything? Yeah. So I don't even know what I was going to say.
Well, before we break your word machine, let's jump out of here. We can fix your word machine, and we'll come back in the errata with a newly repaired word machine.
Yeah, love it. All right, guys, welcome to the errata. We went ahead and updated my operating system. I'm at Windows 98 now, which is great. I've gotten a lot smarter. And I know about a lot of late 90s stuff that I didn't know about before, including Final Fantasy VII, which I've been playing on my Nintendo Switch. Welcome to Video Game Corner. We're going to talk about how fun it is to play any games on the Nintendo Switch. It's
more fun than anywhere else you played it.
It's more fun, and here's what it is, guys, and I feel like they're not even pushing this enough. You can sleep with your game. Basically, you can lay in bed with your game and just kind of pillow talk.
This is already one of those long episodes we said we'd stop doing. Let's do some real errata.
All right, well, why don't you shut up and stop wasting our time? Our first errata comes from Joe Pinion. Joe Pinion. I love that name. That's great. Sounds to me like people are treating support for the throne swaps like sort of permanent alliances, but there's nothing on the card that commands that. I'd much rather just make an alliance with my neighbor and sell my support for the throne to someone else. The card is a bet. You're betting me 2 trade goods and a planet or whatever that you can get to 9 points before anyone else wins without attacking me. If you win the bet, you win the game. If you lose the bet, I keep your stuff and you gain nothing. So this is about support for the throne. I
disagree with this.
Yeah.
Here's the way I think about this is I agree, and this is kind of how I used to think about support for the thrones and why I hate swapping them, because I don't want to make that bet. I don't want to give up the support for the throne because I don't want to have someone being able to lord that over me. Now, the whole reason people do support for the throne swaps is it makes that a two-way street. Mm-hmm. That's why it happens. It happens because if I just give you a support for the throne, you get to lord that over me, and that sucks. But if we swap support for the thrones, we both lord it over each other. Yes. It's not to say it is definitely making us allies, but we have the same lack of incentive to attack each other.
Yeah.
And that's what is required.
Yeah.
And more importantly, we talked last week about the whole idea that once one team makes the swap, everybody starts making that swap. And you don't want to be caught in a situation where you're making a swap that you don't like. And something else that kind of plays off the same topic is we didn't talk about 5-player games last week. Getting support for the throne swaps done early in 5-player games is crucial.
Yep.
Because the first 2 people to do it will do it, And then the second two people will be like, we should probably do it. And if you're the fifth player, you now are never getting a support for the throne. And you only have a support for them to give up, which means you're going to find some weird way to give it up. And that's never a fun situation to be in. So in 5-player games, do the support for the throne swap as soon as possible, if only because it is the meta play. It's the thing people do, and you need to get ahead of it.
Can I ask a question, though? Because I'm a little confused about something that Joe Pinion said here. Joe Pinion said, I'd much rather just make an alliance with my neighbor and sell my support for the throne to someone else.
Yeah.
Did they mean like an informal, like,
yeah, they do,
allies?
And that's why it's nothing, right? It's worth even less. If you're saying support for the throne doesn't make you permanent allies, your counter arguments that was even less of a chance of a permanent ally.
Yeah.
There's just nothing that secures it. Support for the throne secures it the best, and you are right to say it doesn't secure it.
Yeah,
but it is the best at it.
It's not even an alliance. It's just a mutually assured destruction to a light extent.
Right.
It's like it's just you saying, if we fight, it hurts us both. And that's it. That's the end of the story.
That's all you can ask for.
There's no allied victory in Trillion Imperium, so there's no positive function of alliances. It's just I help you a little bit and you help me a little bit, and now we just kind of have to figure out how to make this work. The next one is from 7. When I give out a political secret, I prioritize getting it back very quickly. Offer to use all of your votes but one on any agenda to get the secret back in your hands.
I like this idea of sort of gaming political secret, of like trying to sell the idea that you're like all in favor of one direction, whether you are or not. It's a very 7 thing to do, right? Like we had 7 in the tournament. If you know anything about 7, he's just he's kind of bombastic. He's gonna bluff you. He's gonna change the deal, stuff like that. And this is a thing I can see him doing, and a thing I can see myself doing, which is to say, you get it out there and there's no value in them being able to actually use it effectively. You don't want that to happen to you. So you need to start lying about your preferences on agendas. If you know that they're going to actually agree with you, you need to make that bluff of like, no, I really want the Shard of Ix. I want to do the terrible thing because I hate everyone. Well, hopefully that means they'll kick you out of the vote. Right.
Yeah, I like that. I think this is a smart way to make use of political secret. It's a little like, this is a good way to like go further.
Yeah. It's also an extra step that you might never get to. It's kind of just like, you could try to take it that far, but how often is that going to be a thing?
Yeah.
But more importantly, Stronkowski had some stuff to say about political secret, and I think it's really important to add to our definition of it. He said, listening to this talk about political secret is blowing my mind. You guys are talking about how little it is worth. That's like the exact opposite of our meta. It's the complete opposite. You guys were talking about how throwing it in as an add-on, it's worth less than a single trade good. It's in my group, it's impossible to get. It might not do anything for the person getting it, but it can really hurt the person giving it. A political secret in our group is almost worth a point because that's how much you would have to pay to get it. And what he didn't really say there is nobody pays it. That's sort of the point. In their group, political secret never gets sold. It's the stymie problem. It's like, it hurts you more than it gains anyone anything, so you need to sell it for a lot, and nobody's going to pay that price because it gives them no guarantee.
Yeah. Okay. Why? Wait, why?
I see why. Basically, what we were trying to say is we always like attach political secret to, like we were saying, it's kind of the thing I throw in there as a little extra incentive to maybe convince someone to do something because it's not worth very much to them. Giving it to them, they're not going to pay very much, so we offer very little. But that's kind of the wrong way to think about it, because the fact that it's going to hurt you so badly means why would you give it up for so little? It could crush you. It could absolutely ruin your life.
It's literally
never give it out.
I get it. Okay, so 7 is basically saying like give out political secret and then try and force a situation where they're going to want to use political secret on you. And Stronkowski is saying like, yeah, this is something you're giving up that only hurts you. Right. That's interesting though, because that's kind of, I feel like that's a little bit of tunnel vision, because there's a lot of times that you would use political secret on somebody, but not necessarily because it's going to hurt them, just because you're trying to take over this vote right now.
Right.
Like if I had anybody's political secret and an agenda came out that I felt anything about, I would be like, I'm going to play political secret just because like, oh, it's an opportunity to do it.
Maybe so.
And that's
I
not
think
necessarily...
that's us undervaluing it. Maybe.
I don't know.
I see the argument.
Maybe we're just not using it the way that he uses it. But
right. That's the problem.
Because for me, the way political secret works is basically like this. If I get it, then the only time I would use it is if I wanted to shut someone out because we were probably going to pick an agenda that was going to hurt them.
Yep.
Or much more likely, just an agenda came out that I wanted to win. So I'm going to just try and cut out as many people as possible. So I'm going to just play it. And just because the agenda is going to help me doesn't mean that it is going to be devastating for them. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
Right. That's sort of the part that I agree with is what Stronkowski is sort of saying is the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
It could cut you out of a mutiny vote, and that sucks.
Yeah.
But more often than not, someone might cut you out of a vote that you didn't care about anyways, and it ended up going the way you would have voted if you had been in it.
Exactly.
So it is tricky to say, and I think that's why that dichotomy exists of why some people value it very, very little, and some are like, you should just never sell it ever. And it's because of that. It really comes down to what your meta has considered. But I think Stronkowski has the right of it just in terms of like how people should consider it and how seriously people should take political secret. But the fact that so many people don't makes it easier to deal. Like because you can lean into the fact that people probably aren't going to only use it to crush all of your hopes and dreams, it makes it more valuable. So it's a weird little meta play.
I think this is actually a really good errata that we haven't gotten an errata like this in a while. That's kind of been like, hey, you guys are way over here on this thing, but I think on the continuum, maybe you guys should be closer to where I'm
on the
at.
other side.
And I think this is kind of a situation of the truth lies between us kind of deal.
I think so.
I think this is a little, from what Stronkowski is describing, it sounds a little too nuclear, but I think we've maybe been way too laissez-faire with it. So
for sure. Yeah. That's what, if anything, that's what Stronkowski convinced me of is like, I need to quit just adding political secret to a deal as like an extra trade good. That is not good. That's not a good way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's always that chance that
there's always a chance that you'll get the thing you really want.
There's always that chance that you know what it is? It's too much random number generator for our brains, basically. So we're like,
maybe
listen,
so. Well, it depends on what you're getting out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If it's a bidding war, I think that's the problem. Is political secret to me is my tool for when I'm in a bidding war. I almost never just offer political secret, but when I'm clutch with someone else, I'll throw my political secret in, and hopefully that sways the tide. And in theory, what I'm trying to get, the reason I'm having a bidding war is because that thing is very, very valuable to me. Mm-hmm. And it's not the highest odds that this political secret is going to get used against me on something that hurts me as bad as what I'm gaining from it right now.
Yeah.
So that's the random number generator you're dealing with. You're hedging your bets. So again, it falls somewhere in between both of us.
Yep.
Whew. This is a long episode. We haven't had a long episode in a while.
Yeah.
If you liked this long episode, why don't you rate it on your podcast app of choice, especially Apple Podcasts and iTunes. You can also follow us at Space Cats Pod on Twitter, Space Cats Peace Turtles on Facebook. You can email us plays of the week at spacecatspieceturtles@gmail.com. You can find our posts every week on the Twilight Imperium subreddit. You can join our Patreon to be a part of votes that led to episodes like this one. This originated as a Galactic Council episode. It's sort of like
also make sure to vote. Make sure to vote on Game 2.
Yes, vote on game 2. That's what the Patreon will allow you to do. We're going to knock off another game next week, and then we'll be down to 3. You can join our Discord for fun conversations and to get some of your Patreon benefits.
I am Hunter Donaldson, and I am a comedian in Portland, Oregon, and you can see me every single Thursday at Earthquake Hurricane at Ford Food and Drink. The show starts at 8 o'clock. And also, you can check out my Sunday night show, Comedy is Everything, which is at Alberta Street Pub every Sunday starting at 9. That's a good one. That show's been really great lately, too. We've had big turnouts, lots of really good comedians, and even a fan of the show showed up the last week, so it was great.
Yeah. I want to thank some Space Kiddies. I want to thank Billy, T.G. Welch, Yin for Life, Patience is a Virtue, Naderade, Jimbov, and Umar.
All right.
So remember when I sang that on stream and everybody treated me like I was crazy? I had 100 people gaslight me. I remember, and I'll never forget.
Space Cats Toy Story 4, the movie, in 3D. Toy Story 4 in 3D.
Toy Story 4D. Why are they cowards and didn't go for that? I want to see Toy Story 4D. Actually, I want to stop this recording because I want to go watch. I might go watch that movie literally right now.
Toy Story 3. I'm totally down to. Oh, okay. No, Toy Story 3.
No, I want to go see Toy Story 3 again. I gotta go.
Yeah, I want to go watch Toy Story 4 as well, but I also kind of just want to rewatch the entire saga because let me tell you guys, Toy Story is underrated for just how good it is. Like everybody loves Toy Story, right? But like it's very good.
When you really dig into the lore, man, does it really open wide.
It's got a deep lore, and also, like, what's going on with these toys? Why are they talking? They haven't even explained that yet.
They've never explained why the toys
I'm
talk.
hoping they're going to explain why the toys talk, because I don't get it.
I'm ready for them to connect the Pixar multiverse.
Yes.
And really show us why the emotions talk, and why the cars talk.
Yeah.
And why the dinosaurs talk.
Yeah. Yeah, and why the bugs talk.
And why the Irish people talk.
Yeah, why are Irish people talking? You know what I mean? Why do they have feelings? I didn't know that.
Thank you for listening to Space Cats Peace Turtles, and thanks to Ben Prunty for the use of his music. You can find more at benpruntymusic.com and benprunty.bandcamp.com. Pax Magnifica. Bellum Gloriosum.